My favorite movie genre is horror, and of all the movies that have completely saturated that genre over the decades, the one that rose above all the cheap scares and poor writing to become my favorite horror film is Halloween from 1978. From the haunting opening to the constant building of tension and everything in between, there are a billion things to praise about John Carpenter's legendary slasher classic. I've loved the original since I first watched it years and years ago, but I'd only seen bits and pieces of random sequels over the years. I was curious if any of the other movies in the series could hold up to the original or even surpass it, and so I decided to watch all 13 to find out and rank them. Now, I won't be going into detail on the actual plots or critiquing shot composition or anything that would make this a legitimate film analysis. You can find that on 1,000 much more qualified channels than mine. I just put down any thoughts I had immediately after watching each entry in the series, though there will be some spoilers, so skip any that you'd like to watch. With that said, here's my ranking of all 13 Halloween movies. At the bottom of the list, in 13th place, is Rob Zombie's second Halloween movie, Halloween 2 from 2009. This took the worst aspects of Zombie's first movie and made that the center focus for some reason. Loomis is irredeemably vain and arrogant. Michael is way too human, and all the scenes with young Michael and his mother should have been cut. All of Zombie's scares are so telegraphed and obvious, it is painful to watch. Somehow, he outdid himself and made an even worse movie than his first outing. Shock and gore do not make terror. It's just a 2-hour Rob Zombie music video, and that style and aesthetic does not work for Halloween in the slightest, or do it any favors at all. I think my dog could make a scarier movie. In 12th place is Zombie's first Halloween movie from 2007, and in his first outing, he decided to take a shit on Halloween. The only things teenage characters can talk about in this movie are cursing and sex. Michael apparently needed a 35-minute backstory on why he's evil, showing that Zombie has absolutely no idea what makes Michael scary. Literally every single person except Mrs. Myers, the janitor, and Loomis are complete assholes to Michael for no discernible reason. Laurie calls 911 from one house and then runs to another to escape Michael, and for no reason, the cops go to the house Laurie ran to rather than the address she told them on the phone. How do they know where to go? It's not like Laurie kept them updated on what was going on. Loomis decided to make money off of Michael's story, and the sheriff calls him out on it. Why does the camera shake so much? Even in shots where the characters aren't moving, it's like the cameraman is suffering from withdrawal. Michael is very clearly portrayed as human, so how is he able to survive multiple gunshots and a stab wound? That's the kind of question that doesn't need to be answered in the original, because Michael is the unknown. He's scary because he's unknowable and unstoppable. As soon as you start trying to explain some things, like why he's evil, the things that don't make sense really stick out and make me question why he's a threat at all. Suffice it to say, I hated this pile of shit, and the one before it. Just absolute stains on the legacy of the series. Next up, in 11th place, is Halloween Ends from 2022. Following up immediately from Halloween Kills from 2021, Laurie is hated now, even for things she had no connection to at all, no matter how far you stretch it, just so she has some reason to be in this movie. She also gets to flirt like a middle schooler, despite the fact that she must have done some kind of flirtation to have a child in the first place. Yay. Somehow, Michael has gained anime powers and can read someone's life history from their eyes. Every single person who illegally enters a house is legally obligated to play a couple notes on any piano they find for absolutely no reason whatsoever. It's just mandated by movie law. Why is Michael letting Corey live. Plot armor? Why would Michael really care about passing on his skills to someone else? I was kind of rooting for Corey in the beginning, but after he wrestled with Michael, I just started wanting him to die. In the second half, there starts to be way too many contrivances for my liking, like Laurie pulling the knife out of Corey's neck. Why does she even grab it? How in the fuck does Corey survive stabbing himself full on in the neck? He's very clearly shown to be just a human. What the fuck? And I'm really glad it conveniently takes him out of the plot nice and easy. No lasting repercussions to speak of here, no sir. Allison reasonably believes Laurie killed Corey, but then she just decides to believe Laurie's innocent because she hears Frank say Laurie called in a suicide. Michael feels like an obligation in this movie, like the screenwriters knew they had to include him so the movie would be successful to some degree, but really didn't want to, so they made him do as little as humanly possible. It was extremely disappointing overall. Not quite as bad as Rob Zombie's movies, but just not worth your time, in my opinion. At 10th place is the 6th movie, Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers from 1995. This one has a pretty interesting premise, but Michael needs to be stretched and twisted into something far less appealing as a villain in order to make it work. It also suffered from a lack of exposition, a major lack of exposition. Some major plot points could have really done with better explanations, like what happened to Jamie in the beginning, and why Michael is suddenly controlled by some druidic rune. I lost track of the number of times I either laughed at the movie's expense or was baffled by the thought processes of characters, like Tommy seeing a gate closing in front of him, and then for whatever reason being pretty shocked when that same gate is magically still closed when he runs back to it. Coming in at 9th place is Halloween Resurrection from 2002. Besides the fact that the title is ridiculously cliche, which I think does actually work a bit thematically, it wasn't the worst take on why Haddonfield would be terrorized by Michael yet again, but once again it was executed poorly. Reality TV was just starting to balloon, so I can understand why the writers would come up with that idea. But Laurie being killed off in the first handful of minutes 100% feels like she was contractually obligated to appear in the movie. There were at least 3 scenes I really didn't understand the purpose of, beyond artificially extending screen time, like Busta Rhymes patting himself on the back after comforting the female lead. That scene just drags on for so long. Even though it's really short, it feels like a lot longer than it actually is because it just doesn't mean anything in the context of the movie. On that note, Busta Rhymes was annoying at first, then pretty enjoyable, honestly. And then he overstayed his welcome and usurped the role of hero from the female lead. Suffice it to say, I could have done just fine without him imitating Bruce Lee and talking shit to Michael. I was pretty intrigued by the premise of outside people bearing witness to the slaughter, but I don't think it was used nearly enough, and nobody seemed to actually be affected by the events. These people watched multiple murders happen right in front of them, and they're all just cheery and happy the female lead got out? You could swap the scenes in the Myers house for random clips from the Super Bowl, and the reactions would make so much more sense. 8th place goes to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch from 1982. Like The Curse of Michael Myers, it has a very interesting premise, even more than that movie, but it takes too long to actually start getting into the real plot. Most of the movie had passed before I'd started to get any kind of understanding as to why the movie is titled the way it is. The male lead is very scummy, ignoring his kids for a mystery and some ass, and somehow every woman fawns over him. It felt very much like a cheesy B-movie action hero stapled onto an okay horror movie. I also really didn't like how the female lead was suddenly a robot at the end. I'm still not sure I can suspend my disbelief in favor of Stonehenge being able to power circuit boards to fire lasers and turn heads into bugs. Like, just saying that is fucking weird. Though the ending is really good. It's similar to how Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978 ended, but honestly, I thought it was even better than that one. In 7th place is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers from 1989. I don't have much to say about this one. Apparently, it was rushed out the door, and it definitely feels like an inferior return of Michael Myers. I've never liked when sequels or continuations add in integral plot points that were non existent in previous installments, and the world shifts to accommodate them, like Michael somehow being able to form a psychic connection just because Jamie touched him. Why wouldn't that also affect Laurie, with the amount of times that they've touched each other? Or the nurse from the beginning of the original, when she's grappling with him through the window? Or anyone that touched him ever, for that matter. It just is a nonsensical plot point so that a movie can exist. That's all. 6th place won't be straying far from 7th place. I'm going one movie back to Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers from 1988. And I have to say, this is a far cry from the original or even the sequel. A few things happen that should really have been explained better, like Laurie being written off pretty poorly before the movie even begins, and suddenly she has a child, though Danielle Harris did a surprisingly good job as a child actor. But it had to end on just a terrible note, because I legitimately groaned at that ending. And it doesn't even end up going anywhere. It was just a pointless cliffhanger. All in all, not the worst, but far from the best. Now, 5th place is where I start to actually like the movies more than I dislike them. And the first one to break the top 5 is Halloween Kills from 2021. Man, what a roller coaster. This one had me, then it lost me, then it got me back, then it lost me at the very end. Initially, I thought it was the first sequel to live up to its predecessor, the 2018 one, not the original. Then it focused way too long on the other escaped patient. Then it made me realize how incredible a few people surviving is, so you can see them work through the trauma of what they just experienced together. Then Michael, I guess, feigns being beaten just so he can make a dramatic return? There were parts I loved and hated, and I'm not sure which feeling is stronger. It's pretty hard to look past that unnecessary and out of the blue ending, which just comes across as getting the character out of the way so the screenwriters don't have to do anything with her in the next movie. In 4th place is the original Halloween sequel from 1981. I really like how it follows up on the original, continuing the same night that the first one began on, though what holds it back in my opinion is just feeling like more of the same. On the other hand, later sequels do try to build and expand upon what Carpenter originally laid out, but in doing so, forget the essence of what makes Michael Myers terrifying. And I will always take an unknown Michael over a slapdash explanation of why he's evil. And the thing that really gets me with those explanations is they poorly explain why Michael is evil, but not how he's able to survive all the injuries he racks up over the series. If you're going to start explaining one thing, you kinda have to cover everything else, or the suspension of disbelief is stretched way too thin and people are taken out of the movie. But anyway, Halloween 2 is a pretty good entry in the series. In 3rd place is Halloween H20, 20 years later, from 1998, or is it H2O? I actually thought it was H2O when I first saw it, because especially with the box cover looking like there's water droplets coming down, it looked like water. I'd seen this once years ago, but I was surprised to see how much tension I actually felt while watching. I do wish Ronnie surviving being shot had been worked in better than misleading the audience, and then, surprise, he's actually alive. Other than that, everything really made sense to me, and I really liked the focus on showing Michael actually doing what he does in a realistic manner, like distracting Ronnie to get inside the gate. That's something I feel is lacking in a lot of Halloweens. Michael is supposed to be just a human, sans healing factor on steroids, and so is limited by his humanity, and yet consistently does things that seem to be beyond human limits, but could possibly be accomplished, which is a huge contributor to what makes him scary as a villain. H20 accomplished what its predecessors, Season of the Witch, Return, Revenge, and Curse failed to do in my eyes: expand the world in a realistic and palatable manner. This was second place for me right up until I watched the second place entry, which I'll get into now. Second place goes to Halloween from 2018. Ah, yeah, Halloween, the sequel to Halloween. To be honest, the title of this movie is probably the thing I like the least about it. To be fair, it 100% is a return to fantastic form. It just barely edges out H20 because I saw just a little bit more to the characters than in H20, though I do also really like those characters. Coming off of Rob Zombie's dual decimation of the series, I can't put into words how incredible it was to see a competent story play out. The characters talk, act, and react to situations like normal, rational people, with the weird exception of Allison's boyfriend, who is just a complete jerk-off when he gets drunk. People only swear when it's necessary. People only scream when they're actually in danger and afraid, and also keep quiet to hide. Lots of tension is built up and not released immediately, which is critical to truly terrifying someone. Take notes, zombie. Overall, this has felt like the most natural follow-up and evolution on the original. But nothing can overtake the simplistic masterpiece that is my first place pick, the original Halloween from 1978. This is far and away the best in the series, and the best scary movie of all time in my opinion. It's John Carpenter at his best, though his adaptation of The Thing from 1982 is another absolute classic. The most primal and instinctual fear is fear of the unknown, and Carpenter showed off his masterful understanding of this with a mostly faceless force of evil that could not be understood. You can't beat the simple terror of that original score either. One of my favorite scenes in any movie is when Michael's face slowly appears out of the darkness behind Laurie. It gives me chills every single time. The single thing I find weak about this movie is immediately following that legendary shot when Michael supposedly tries to stab Laurie, but somehow only grazes her arm when she's very clearly unaware that he's right behind her. He legitimately could have killed her in that moment if it wasn't a movie and Laurie needed to survive so it could wrap up. But otherwise, this movie is as close to perfect as a horror movie can be. The original is my favorite horror movie, one of my top 5 movies of all time, and is absolutely deserving of the #1 spot on my list. From the beginning of this series viewing, the original Halloween was at the top, and it never left that spot. Maybe one day John Carpenter will return to write and direct another Halloween, but until that happens, I'll happily rewatch the 1978 classic until I break the disc. And that's my ranking of the 13 Halloween movies released at the time of recording. I had a lot of fun going through the series, and while none of the sequels were able to conquer the original, they helped me understand what I love so much about the first one, and made me a real fan of the series, having seen it at its best and worst. I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.